Okay, so today's lecture we are going to look at chapter 1, which is on macromolecules. Okay, so this is the first chapter. So let's look at first the content of this chapter. So in this chapter we are going to look at functional groups, water, introduction to macromolecules. Okay, so introduction to macromolecules, amino acid, peptides and protein, structure and function of carbohydrates, structure and functions of lipid, and structure and function of nucleic acids. Okay, so um, okay, so these are the learning outcomes. Discuss some biologically important functional groups. Okay, so functional groups are a component of in within a molecule that has that gives the molecule its property, for example, or it involves in certain reaction, for example. So those are functional groups. So later, when we look at deep into this chapter, for example, for the subtopic um, um, proteins can. So the functional group that can be found within the monomer of protein, which is amino acid, the functional group is amino group or carboxyl groups. So the presence of this functional group will give the molecule its property. So amino acid can. So because it has amino group and also carboxyl group, so it gives the amino acid the property of being both acids and also base. Okay, so and also with the presence of this functional group, the amino group and also the carboxyl group will be involving in chemical reaction, for example, to attach one amino acid to another amino acid through the formation of peptide bond. Kan? So that is functional groups, a group of atoms within the molecule that involves in reaction, and it also gives the molecule its property. Okay, and then second, explain the structure of water and describe the properties of water and its importance. Okay, so water is really crucial for living organisms. So as we know, the basic formula, the basic structure of a water molecule, the formula is H2O. Kan? One oxygen atom bonded to one oxygen atom bonded to two hydrogen atoms. Okay, so when one oxygen atom bonded to two hydrogen atoms, it gives the water molecule a really unique properties. Okay, a really unique property. It causes the water molecule to be a polar molecule that enable the water molecule to function as, for example, solvent involved in chemical reaction. Also, as I mentioned before, in order for one amino acid to attach to another amino acid, it requires water molecule, for example. So amino acid is attached to another amino acid, and then the reaction requires water. Okay, water. So the process, we call it as condensation, if I'm not mistaken. Condensation. Okay. So you attach molecules together, and the reaction requires water molecule to be involved. Okay, so a water molecule also, because it has its polarity, the oxygen atom has partial negative charge, hydrogen atom has partial positive charge. When two water molecules are attached or near to one another, they are bonded through hydrogen bonds. Okay, so, that is for water molecule. We are going to look at in detail the structure, the properties of water molecule, the importance of water molecule in this subtopic. Okay, and then next one is formation of macromolecules from monomers. Okay, so there will be four macromolecules that we are going to look at, which is protein. Okay, so protein. So proteins, the monomer for protein is amino acids. Okay, so there will be 20 different amino acids. Okay, And then those amino acids are linked together through the formation of peptide bonds, okay, to form polypeptide. Okay, protein, functional protein. Protein has many functions. For example, one of it is being enzyme. Okay, so and then the next group of macromolecule is carbohydrates. Okay, so the monomer for carbohydrates are monosaccharides. Okay, so monosaccharides. So the monosaccharides will be there's different types of monosaccharide. The basic one that you have learned, for example, glucose, fructose, galactose. Kan? So there are also other monosaccharides. Okay, based on its structure. So for glucose, galactose, and also uh, fructose, so those are monosaccharides that has 6 carbon, okay, in the molecules. So there are also other monosaccharides that only has 3 carbons. Kan? So 3 carbons. So there are monosaccharides that have 5 carbons. So there will be different types of monosaccharide based on its the presence of how many carbon are there in that molecule, or the presence of carbonyl groups within the molecule. Okay, so the basic one is the monosaccharides, and then when you attach monosaccharide together, it forms disaccharides. So example of disaccharide we have here is maltose, or sucrose, or lactose. Okay, so those are the basic ones. And then after monosaccharides we have oligosaccharides. Okay, so oligosaccharides, short chains of monosaccharide links together. And then we have complex carbohydrates. Okay, complex carbohydrates such as starch. Okay, starch or glycogen. Starch are found in, for example, potato. Kan, so potato, rice. Kan, bila when you eat rice or your bread or fries, for example, it gives you energy because it has so many glucose molecule inside those complex molecule. Okay, so it gives you energy, for example. Okay, and then the next macromolecule is lipid I will go later. The third one first, which is nucleic acids. Okay, nucleic acids. So nucleic acids, the monomer will be nucleotides. Okay, nucleotides. So when you attach together all these nucleotides, it forms polynucleotides. So there are two types of nucleotides. Okay, or polynucleotides. They are DNA, kan, that are found in your nucleus, and the other one is RNA. Okay, so DNA and RNA are found in your cell. Basically, the function of DNA is to store your genetic information. So that genetic information, it contains so many information, and that information will be used to synthesize protein. Kan? So in order to synthesize protein, it requires a smaller version, a smaller copy of that large information stored in DNA, which is the RNA. So RNA copies some information from DNA, and that information in the RNA will be used to synthesize protein. So protein has many functions, as I mentioned before. It can also function as enzyme, for example, the basic one. Okay, and then the fourth class of macromolecule will be lipids. Okay, so lipids is a group of macromolecule that does not have any monomers. So that you have to take note. So lipid is not composed of monomers. It is divided into a few groups, which is, for example, phospholipids. Okay, so as we know, phospholipid is the uh, is the is the component within plasma membrane. Okay, so the phospholipid, it forms the phospholipid bilayer of plasma membrane, and then within the plasma membrane there will be protein embedded that has many different functions. And then the second group of lipid is triglycerides. So triglycerides are fats that are found, for example, in vegetable oil, okay, or animal fats, for example. So we have saturated fats, we also have unsaturated fats. Okay, and then the third class of lipid will be cholesterol. Okay, so cholesterol, the structure is composed of four fused ring. Okay, four fused rings. So cholesterol is composed of four fused ring, and then basically cholesterol can also be found embedded in the plasma membrane of animal cell only. Okay, and then cholesterol is the precursor molecule to synthesize steroid hormones. Okay, example of steroid hormones, for example, we have the sex hormones such as estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. There are also other steroid hormones, which in order to synthesize this hormone, it is from the molecule of cholesterol. Okay. For 1.3, it is quite big that we are going to look into those details. Okay, and then for 1.4, which is the elaboration of each monomers, of each macromolecules. So describe the general structure of amino acids and group them based on their side chains. So the side chains of amino acid is the functional group. Okay, it can compose of functional groups. Okay, so for example, the side chain uh, can be composed of amino groups or carboxyl groups, or even only hydrogen atoms. Okay, or hydroxyl groups. Okay, so it will determines the property of that amino acid. And then 1.4, describe the formation of dipeptide and also polypeptide. One amino acid attached to another amino acid, it forms a dipeptide. When three or more amino acids are joined together, it forms a polypeptide. So the amino acids in a polypeptide chain are joined by peptide bonds. So later we are going to look at how peptide bonds are formed. Okay. And then 1.4, discuss the classification of protein in terms of levels of organization, structure, composition, and also function. Okay, so classify protein based on level of organization. So when we have one amino acid attached to another amino acid in a straight chain, for example, so that is the primary structure. Okay, so from primary structure, it forms secondary structure. Okay, so secondary structure of polypeptide, there it exists in two forms. Either it is in the helical form or in the pleated sheets form. So dia berlingkar ataupun folded, right? Beta pleated sheets. So and then we have the tertiary structure and also quaternary structure. So these different levels of structure will determine the function of the protein. So protein have many different function. It can function as enzyme. It can function as, for example, transport proteins. It can also function as hormones. So even your antibody is protein, kan? So protein. So protein, for protein that is insoluble in water, we call it as fibrous protein. Okay, so fibrous protein are proteins that will not be able to dissolve in water. So those protein, for example, are found in your hair or in your nails. Can so those are proteins that cannot dissolve in water. Okay. And also there's a group of protein, we call it as globular proteins. Okay, so globular proteins are protein that can dissolve in water. For example, antibody or hemoglobin or hormones or enzymes. So those are globular protein. So this type of protein needs to be dissolved in your blood to be able to be carried out throughout your body. For example, okay. So, that is 1.4, which is specifically we are going to look into proteins. And then the next subtopic, describe the four groups of carbohydrates I've mentioned: monosaccharide, disaccharide, oligosaccharides, and also complex carbohydrates. Okay. And then describe the synthesis of disaccharides and polysaccharides. Okay, polysaccharides are the fourth one. And then describe the structure and function of starch, glycogen, and cellulose. Okay, so basically, for starch, glycogen, and cellulose, the monomer is glucose. Okay, it's glucose. So for example, if you eat food that has high content of starch, for example, or starch lah, even kan, if you eat your rice or your bread or fries, potatoes, kan, any tubers, it contains high amount of starch. the monomer for starch is glucose. As we know, glucose is the fuel for cellular respiration, and through cellular respiration, it is to produce ATP, energy. Okay, and then cellulose, as we know, it is the cell wall. Okay, cell wall of plant cell. Okay, and then 1.6, this state the types of lipids I've mentioned also. So there will be different types of lipid: phospholipid, triglycerides, steroids. Okay, so those are the three lipids that we are going to look at in this chapter. Okay, and then describe the synthesis and structure of fats and also or triglycerides, and then state the function of lipids. Okay, so you have to know what is the function of phospholipid, for example, what is the function of triglycerides, what is the function of steroids. Okay, and then 1.7, describe the structure and components of nucleic acids. Okay, so nucleic acids, the monomer will be nucleotides. Okay, so the nucleotides for RNA and also the nucleotide for DNA is different. Okay, is different. It differs. For example, in the in the structure of the nucleotides is the pentose sugar. Okay, so the pentose sugar nucleotide, it is composed of phosphate bonded to a 5 carbon sugar and then to a base. Okay, so the 5 carbon sugar for DNA and RNA is different. Okay, so for DNA we call it as deoxyribose. Okay, it is a 5 carbon sugar. 5 carbon sugar, sugar falls under carbohydrate kan. So maksudnya dalam nucleotide itu ada sugar. Okay, 5 carbon sugar, pentose sugar. So for DNA it is deoxyribose. For RNA it is ribose. Okay, so that's why DNA is deoxy dinucleo di dinu deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, RNA is ribonucleic acids. Okay, so DNA is found in the nucleus. RNA is the smaller version that copies certain information from the DNA and used to synthesize protein in the cytoplasm. Okay, so so these are the overview, the topics that we are going to look at in this chapter. Okay, so before we go deep into all these macromolecules, we need to know the basic information. Okay, the introduction first. Okay, so introduction: proteins, DNA, carbohydrate, lipids contain carbon atoms and also other elements such as hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus. Okay, basically all these macromolecule, protein, DNA, and carbohydrate, and also lipid, they must compose of carbon and hydrogen, oxygen. Tu basic mesti ada. Okay. Kalau untuk, for example, untuk for the monomers of uh, nucleic acids, kan, which is the nucleotides, it has phosphate. Okay, it has phosphate. The amino acid, okay, it has nitrogen, kan, in the amino group, for example, it also has sulfur. Some of it has phosphate. Okay, so it depends on the molecule, but all the monomers, all the macromolecules, they must contain composed of carbon, hydrogen, itu mesti kena ada. Okay, uh, mesti kena ada these two atoms, carbon and also hydrogen. Okay. Oxygen ada kat amino acids, monosaccharides ada oksigen, lipid mesti ada oksigen, okey. Nucleic acid ada oksigen juga. Okey, so tapi tak semua ada fosfat, tak semua ada sulfur, tak semua ada nitrogen. Macam tu, okey. So and then atoms are held together by chemical bonds. Okay, so chemical bonds are bonds between atoms in a molecule. Okay, in a molecule such as, for example, water. Yang paling simple lah, water, H2O, for example, hydrogen and oxygen. The bond that exists between the hydrogen and oxygen, we call it as covalent bonds. Okay, covalent Covalent bonds, ini chemical bonds. Okay, so atoms are held together by chemical bonds. So there are different types of chemical bonds. So we have covalent bonds. Covalent bonds are bonds that are formed between atoms within a molecule. Macam tu, okay. So there will be other types of chemical bonds such as hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bonds are Hydrogen bonds are bonds that form between water molecule, between oxygen of one water molecule and hydrogen of another water molecule. Okay, so we have two water molecules that are nearby, that are near to each other. So oxygen and also hydrogen will be attracted to one another through the formation of hydrogen bonds. For example, there will be van der Waals interaction, and then there will be hydrophobic interactions. Okay, so there will be ionic bonds. Okay, so there are different types of bond that attracts molecule together, be it between atoms within the same molecule or between atoms of different molecule. Okay. So types of chemical bonds, we have covalent bonds, okay, ionic bonds, hydrogen bonds, hydrophobic interactions, and also van der Waals interactions. So these are the five bonds that you have to know. Okay, you have to know how the bond is formed. Okay, so the bond is between atoms in a molecule or between molecules. So you have to know. Okay, so let's look at the term electronegativity first. Okay, so electronegativity is an atom's affinity or attractions for electrons. Okay, so the more electronegative an atom is, the more strongly it pulls shared electrons towards itself. Benda ni sebenarnya, apa yang nak cakap sebenarnya ni? Electronegativity. For example, so I give you an example. Okay, oxygen. Okay, oxygen atom kan, oxygen atom. So oxygen is an atom where it has 6 valence electrons. Okay, 6 valence electrons. So it has 6 valence electrons. Ini 2, 4, 6, 8. Sorry. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 valence electrons. So this the 6 valent electrons will attract electrons from other atoms. Okay, for example, in the formation of a water molecule, in order to obey the octet rule, kan, octet rule sama ada kat valence electron, it has to have 2 electrons or 8. Kan, this is chemistry. Okay, so you have another atom, for example, the hydrogen atoms. So hydrogen atom, it has only 1 electrons. Okay, only 1 electron. And then another hydrogen atom also has 1 electron in the valence shell tu kan. So electron of the hydrogen and also electron of the oxygen, as we observe here, oxygen has more electrons. So the oxygen atom will put electrons more strongly toward itself because it has more electrons. Okay, it has more electrons. So electrons of the hydrogen atom will be pulled towards the oxygen. Okay, electrons of the hydrogen will be pulled towards the oxygen. So oxygen is more electronegative compared to the hydrogen atom because oxygen has more electrons. Okay. So let's look at the definition once again. It is an atom's affinity or attraction for electrons. The more electronegative an atom is, the more strongly it pulls shared electrons toward itself. Okay, so that's why a water molecule, it has polarity. It has a dipole. Okay, it has a dipole. Dia tak ada full charge, but it has a dipole, a polarity, partial charge. Okay. So because the oxygen pulls the electron of the hydrogen towards itself, so it makes the oxygen atoms to have a partial negative charge. Okay, partial negative charge. Okay, sebab dia dah tarik elektron kat diri dia. And then for the hydrogen atoms, because the electron of the hydrogen atom is pulled towards the oxygen, so the hydrogen atom will have a partial positive charge. Okay, so that is electronegativity, right? Okay, so for the covalent bond, covalent bond is the sharing of a pair of electrons by two atoms. Okay, so it says here no unpaired electrons. So it means that the atoms within the molecule that involve in the formation of covalent bond, they must pair up to obey the octet rule. Kan. So dekat valence shell tu, the electron must be either 8 or 2. Kan? 8 or 2. Betul tak? You all belajar chemistry kan? Betul ke saya salah? Okay. So saya belajar chemistry dah lama tau. Degree saya dah lama. Right? So uh, so basic concept you have to know, right? So in order for two atoms to form covalent bond, so they must make sure that they obey the octet rule. So they leave no electrons unpaired. Okay. So and then so strength depend on the number of shared electrons, right? Maybe so in a molecule that composed of several atoms, so they may involve the formation of only one covalent bond between the atoms, or double covalent bond, or triple. Okay, covalent bond, it depends on how much electrons is in the valence shell though, right? Okay, so let's look at some example. Can, as you can see from this table, it gives you an example for hydrogen. Can, so hydrogen molecule, different, yeah? Hydrogen atom and hydrogen molecule. Hydrogen molecule is H2O. Hydrogen atom is H only, right? So hydrogen atom individually, it has only one electrons. Tak cukup lah nak obey octet rule, right? So it has to exist in pair. Okay. So then come another hydrogen atom. So they will share electron. So the sharing of electrons between two atoms, it leads to the formation of covalent bonds. Okay. So electrons of atoms will be shared. Let's look at the nampak dia punya definition. Sharing, okay, sharing of electrons between two atoms, or tambah in a molecule. In a molecule, it cannot be between different molecule. Okay, in a molecule. So that one you have to take note. Covalent bond is the bond between atoms in a molecule. Okay, not between molecules. Okay, so another example of molecule is oxygen. The air that you breathe in, it contains oxygen, right? Okay, so ada perbezaan antara, there's the difference between oxygen atom and oxygen molecule. Oxygen atom is O only, kan? So oxygen atom individually, it has 6 valence electron. Tak obey lagi octet rule, right? Okay, so it has to find another 2 electrons. So another 2 electron, for example, in oxygen molecule, the 2 oxygen atom will share 2, kan? 1, 2 ni, kan? Two pairs of electrons to form double covalent bond. Okay, double covalent bond. So each of these oxygen atom in an oxygen molecule now obey the octet rule. No electron remain unpaired. Okay. So and then in the water molecule H2O, can H2O, oxygen again has 6 valence electron. I've given you the explanation before, can, earlier. So water molecule between one oxygen and 2 hydrogen atom to form a water molecule. So oxygen and hydrogen in a water molecule involves the formation of covalent bond as well. Okay, and then also methane. Okay, carbon, okay, is the atom that has 4 valence electron. So it has to find another 4 atoms that can contribute to the pairing of electrons. Kan? So carbon will pair with the electrons of the hydrogen to form one covalent bond, another covalent bond with another hydrogen, another covalent bond with another hydrogen, and also another covalent bond with another hydrogen. So one carbon forms 4 covalent bonds with another 4 um, hydrogen atoms. Okay, to so that they obey the octet rule. Okay, so covalent bond, you have to remember, it is the bond between atoms in a molecule. Okay, not between molecule, in a molecule. Okay, so there's two types of covalent bond. Okay, the first one is non-polar covalent bond. Okay, so a covalent bond between two atoms of the same element where the electrons are shared equally because the two atoms have the same electron negativity. Okay, so for example, two hydrogen atoms shared one pair of electrons. Okay, so non-polar covalent bond, it is the bond between atoms that have the same electronegativity. It means that the valence electrons shared is the same. So tu, okay, equal sharing. Okay, equal sharing of electrons. So for the atoms that involve in the formation of non-polar covalent bond, the molecule has no partial charge. Okay, has no partial charge. Dia molecule yang stabil lah kat situ. Okay. So and then the second one is polar covalent bond. Okay, polar covalent bond is when an atom is bonded to a more electronegative atom. The electrons of the bond are not shared equally. Okay, because maybe in that molecule, one atom such as the oxygen is more electronegative. It has more electrons compared to the hydrogen atom that has less electrons. Again, so the formation of covalent bond within this molecule involve unequal sharing of electrons. Okay, unequal sharing of electrons because the bond are formed due to the unequal sharing of electrons. It makes the molecule to be polar. Okay, to be polar. Okay, so such bond vary in their polarity. So the bonds between the oxygen and two hydrogen atoms of water molecule are quite polar. So the oxygen atom is more electronegative. Kan kita dah tengok tadi kan, oxygen it has 6 valence electron kan. So it is more electronegative. It attracts the electron from the hydrogen. Okay, so another hydrogen, the electron is also attracted to the electrons of the oxygen. So because electrons are pulled more towards the oxygen, it makes the oxygen to have a partial negative charge. The hydrogen to have partial positive charge. So this makes water molecule to be a polar molecule. So when we say that water is a polar molecule, so what is the significance of water being polar? So it allows the water molecule to function as solvent, okay, solvent to dissolve other polar molecules such as for example garam, salt. Kan, salt is composed of sodium and also chloride. Kan? So sodium ion has positive charge. Chloride ion also has charge which is negative. So when you place salt inside water, it causes the salt to dissolve because of the polarity of water. So the negative partial charge of the oxygen will be attracted to the sodium ion, positively charged. The partial positive charge of hydrogen will be attracted to the chloride ion. So it makes the salt to be able to dissolve in water because they are attracted to water molecule. Water molecule surrounds this ion, making sure that the salt will dissolve. Okay. So the dissolve of this salt we are going to look at later, and we are going to come across with the term hydration shell. So nanti kita tengok kejap lagi. Nanti, okay. Okay, so polar and non-polar molecule. Okay, so water molecule. So in a water molecule, electrons of hydrogen atoms have a negative charge. They have a negative charge and are pushed towards the oxygen. Electrons of hydrogen atoms have a negative charge. Obviously, electrons have negative charge, okay, and are pulled towards the oxygen atom in a water molecule. So oxygen atom has partial negative charge, kan? Partial negative charge sebab apa? Dia tarik elektron daripada hydrogen. Okay. As for the hydrogen, atom has partial positive charge. hydrogen atom sebab elektron dia dah ditarik oleh oksigen tu tadi, so it makes the hydrogen to be more positive, kan? Partial positive charge. Partial tu maksudnya charge dia bukan sepenuhnya hilang. Ada je kat situ tapi di-share. Macam tu, right? Sekejap ya Hazan ya. Kita break sekejap. Okay, so kita sambung balik semula. Kita akan extend lebih sikit daripada 4.50 sebab tadi kita macam nak ikut orang lain. Boleh saya extend sikit? Okay. Sikit je, sebelum pukul 5 kita habis. Okay. Alright. Okay. So alright. So for the that is explanation for water molecule, and then the next one is ethane. Okay, so ethane molecule. So as we know, as we look at this diagram of the ethane molecule, so as we can see, it is composed of carbon and also hydrogen. So carbon, we know that it has four valence electrons. Okay, so it has to find another 4 electrons to be shared in the formation of in the formation of covalent bonds. So it says here the individual bonds of ethane are much less polar because the electronegativities of carbon and hydrogen are similar. Okay, so carbon shared one of its electron to the hydrogen atom. Each electrons of the carbon is shared by electrons of hydrogen atoms that surround the carbon. Okay, so this makes the covalent bond within the ethane molecule between the carbon and hydrogen to be non-polar because the electron are shared equally. Kan? So for ethane, the molecule it does not have any charge, does not have any polarity, polar charge. So for the ethane molecule, it is stable, right? So that is for the water molecule and also the ethane. Okay, so next one is the ionic bonds. Okay, so the chemical attraction. What is ionic bond? It is the chemical attraction between a cation and also an anion. Cation is ion that has positive charge. Okay, cation is ion that has positive charge. Anion is the ion that has negative charge. Okay, so in the formation of covalent bond tadi, kita tengok electrons are shared. Okay, electrons are shared. But for the ionic bonds, it involves atom to lose or gain electrons. Fully losing the electron or fully gaining the electron. Okay, so for example, the sodium atom. So as you can see, the valence shell tu it has valence one electron valence kat situ kan. So instead of susah-susah dia nak cari another seven, so it might as well let go of that electron kan. So let go. So it makes the sodium ion because it has let go of its electron, one of its electron, it makes the sodium ion to have positive charge. Maksudnya dia dah kurang satu elektron, dia ada lebih proton kat situ, lebih satu proton. So it makes the sodium ion to have one positive charge. It let go one electron, it becomes more positive. It has one positive charge. Okay, Na plus. Okay, Na plus. As for the chloride atom, as you can see, it has 7 valence electron. It has to find another electron, which is the electron is gained from the electron of the sodium. So it makes the chloride ion gaining one electron, one extra electron. So it makes the chloride ion to have a negative charge, Cl negative. Okay. So because sodium ion is positively charged, chloride ion is negatively charged, they will be attracted to one another to form ionic bond. Okay, positive and negative attracted to one another to form ionic bond. So sodium atom loses one electron to become Na plus. Chloride atoms gain an electron to become Cl negative, chloride ion that is. So opposite charges of sodium ion and also chloride ion is linked by ionic bond to form an ionic compound. Okay, so this is an ionic compound. Okay, so compound. So kalau awak ambil garam letak atas meja, you see it as hablo kat situ kan. So solid, right? Solid. So but when you place the salt inside water, because the the atoms, the sodium the sodium ion and also the chloride ion, it has charge, so it causes this atom to be separated and attracted to water molecule and causing the salt to dissolve. So sodium ion will be surrounded by water molecule. Okay, chloride ion also will be surrounded by water molecules. So these two ions that are surrounded by water molecule, we call it as hydration shell. So when water molecule surrounds cation or anion or any other polar molecule, it forms hydration shell, making that molecule or compound to be dissolved in water. Okay. So you try to saya tunjuklah. Okay, sodium chloride kan positively charged, water molecule bentuk dia macam ni, right? Okay, so oxygen is negatively charged. Okay, so water molecule will surround the sodium ion. The oxygen will be attracted to the sodium ion. Okay, the oxygen will be attracted to the sodium ion. So when water molecules surrounding this sodium ion, it makes the sodium ion to dissolve in water. As for the chloride, because it has negative charge, water molecule also surrounds the chloride ion to form hydration shell. Ini kita call it as hydration shell. But because chloride ion is negatively charged, so the chloride ion, the water molecule will be attracted to the chloride ion, but this time the hydrogen atom will be facing the chloride ion. Okay, hydrogen atom is they are positively charged. So hydrogen of water molecule will be attracted to the chloride. Okay, so this makes salt to be able to dissolve in water because they are surrounded by water molecule through the formation of hydration shell. Okay. So next one is hydrogen bonds. Okay, a weak attractive forces exist between hydrogen atoms with a partial positive charge and an el- and an electronegative atom, which is either nitrogen, oxygen, or F ni apa? Fluoride. Okay, fluoride. Okay. So so dalam ayat ni kan dia kata a weak attractive forces exist between hydrogen atom with a partial positive charge. Awak boleh tambah kat sini in one molecule, okay, and an electronegative atom of another molecule. Okay, hydrogen bonds it forms between atoms of different molecule. Okay, different molecule. Hydrogen bonds form between atoms of different molecule. So hydrogen atom has, for example, positive partial charge, and then another molecule that may have oxygen or nitrogen or fluoride. So these atoms of another molecule that has either NO or F, so these atoms will have partial negative charge. Positive and negative will be attracted to one another through the formation of hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bond is formed between two molecules. Atoms with the atoms of different molecule attracted to one another due to partial charge. Okay. So hydrogen atoms are collectively strong when present in large number. Individually, the hydrogen bond is a weak bond, okay, but when they exist in large amount, so it forms a quite strong interaction. Contohnya apa? Air kan, permukaan air. So water between water molecule, there will be formation of hydrogen bonds. Okay, so that's why kalau we look at some example, insects, for example, insects can walk on the surface of water due to hydrogen bonds between water molecule. Statement yang atas ni, the first statement here, it explains on this condition. For example, okay, one water molecule, okay, we know that it has oxygen and also hydrogen. Hydrogen, we know that it is positively charged. Oxygen, we know that it is negatively charged. It meets with another water molecule also composed of the same element, the same atoms. So hydrogen, we know that it has positive charge, partial positive. So hydrogen atom that has partial positive charge will be attracted to oxygen of another water molecule that has partial negative charge and to form hydrogen bonds. Okay, hydrogen bonds. And if you look at this diagram, you have to take note that every time when you draw hydrogen bonds between molecule, you have to draw using dotted line only. Dotted line only. If you were to draw hydrogen bonds using a bold line, so that is wrong. Okay, so when you draw hydrogen bond using a bold line, so that indicates that it involves in the formation of covalent bond. So dia jadi salah. So make sure when you draw hydrogen bonds, you use dotted line. Okay, dotted lines. So ini dotted line. So water molecule that has hydrogen, it has partial positive. It meets with another molecule which is such as, for example, ammonia. So ammonia, the nitrogen has negative charge. So positive of hydrogen from the molecule of water will be attracted to the nitrogen that has partial negative. So the attraction between partial positive and negative will form hydrogen bonds. Okay, hydrogen bonds that you must draw using dotted lines. Okay. So so far, do you have any questions? Sikit lagi, 2 bond je lagi. Okay. So hydrophobic interaction, the interaction between the non-polar and hydrophobic the interaction between the non-polar and also hydrophobic molecules in the polar solvent, usually water. Okay. So for example, the mixing of fats and also non-polar in water molecule. So hydrophobic interaction, it is formed between non-polar molecules such as, for example, phospholipid molecule and another phospholipid molecule. So phospholipid molecule, we know it has hydrophilic heads, hydrophilic heads. Okay, and also hydrophilic and hydrophobic tail. Okay, hydrophobic tail. So when you throw this molecule of phospholipid inside water, they will assemble together, and the hydrophobic tail will be attracted to one another. Okay, this is the hydrophobic region. So hydrophobic molecule will be attracted to one another through the formation of hydrophobic interaction. Individually, hydrophobic interaction are weak interactions, but when they exist in large amount, it forms a quite a strong interaction. Okay, so if you look at this diagram, this is polypeptide polypeptide chain composed of amino acids. So these are amino acids that are linked together. So amino acid, later we are going to look at, amino acid has side chains. So the side chains of amino acid can be composed of hydrocarbons. So hydrocarbons here, hydrocarbons are a molecule that composed of carbon and also hydrogen. So the interaction between carbon and hydrogen, they form tadi apa, non-polar covalent bond kan. So it makes the molecule to be non-polar. So non-polar with another non-polar, it forms hydrophobic interactions. Okay, it does not attract water molecule. Okay, does not attract water molecule. And then the last one is van der Waals interactions. Okay, so individually, van der Waals interaction is a weak interaction, but when they exist in large quantity, it forms quite a strong and powerful interaction. What is van der Waals interaction? Okay, kita tahu hydrogen atom ni individually it has one electrons. Okay, and then another hydrogen one electrons. So dia akan form non-polar interaction, but these electrons, they will move in a cloud of electrons. So it makes the atom to it causes the electrons of the hydrogen molecule to move in its cloud. Okay, so at one point in one region of the hydrogen molecule, because the electron will be moving around the molecule, so so the electron will move in this region of the hydrogen. Okay, so this region will be negatively charged. At one point, the electron will move towards this region, so it makes the hydrogen molecule to have to induce partial charge kat situ. It says here there is no electronegativity difference between two hydrogens. So they are non-polar and do not have a dipole. However, when two hydrogen molecule are put next to one another, when you place two hydrogen molecule to one another, so it causes the electron cloud to move. Okay, so and put to one another, and this induces a dipole. It causes the electron cloud to move around the molecule. Okay, so because electron rearrange themselves, macam itulah. So that is van der Waals interaction. So that's it for the bonds. So this is the summary of all the bonds that we have looked at. So you can go through yourself. So far, do you have any question regarding what we have looked at today? Any questions? Faham? Okay. So our next class will be on Friday. So make sure that you revise what we have learned for today. And then before our class on Friday, make sure that you do period study before my class. Okay. So if you don't have any questions, so I guess we can end our class. So thank you, class.
Thank you, madam.
Okay.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam. Okay.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Okay.
Thank you, madam.
All right.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, welcome.